Hello. I've been thinking about this video, and I think it's important to establish a baseline. And here's a topic that I like to talk about, and I'm doing this before I dive into the dark stuff where we start talking about black on black oppression again, because it takes a lot out of me to do videos on, kids who were killed either on purpose or in drive-bys. Um, just in them killing each other and just the oppression in general. So, because 99% of oppression today that happens to the black community is delivered by a black hand. And most of them carry colors or they're part of cliques. Um, and then also the mothers of that raise their children to be ghetto and don't give them a good education, because you don't got to be smart to give someone a good education. Like that's the thing that people always talk about. Like, no, you can work with your kids to help improve their skills, especially if they're already going to private school. You know what I'm saying? Or not private school, but private or public school. It doesn't matter if they're going to private or public school. You should help your kids. And there again, you can find someone who will help their kids. There's lots of tutor programs and stuff like that. And then buying them books to work on at home as well. So, and that's important. That's very important. But I digress. And what this video is about is some famous atheists and scientists that arrived at the conclusion that God is real. So, or that there is a God, but maybe not the God of the Bible or the Quran or anything like that, like specifically, but an intelligence, a higher intelligence that created everything. But I'm gonna start off with let us begin with a parable. Imagine a satellite phone is washed ashore on a remote island inhabited by a tribe that has never had contact with modern civilization. The natives play the numbers on the dial pad and hear different voices upon hitting certain sequences. They assume first that it's the device that makes the noises. Some of the clever natives, the scientists of the tribe, assemble an exact replica and hit the numbers again. They hear the voices again. The conclusion seems obvious to them. This particular combination of crystals and metals and chemicals produce what seems like human voices. And this means that voices are simply properties of the device. But the tribal sage summons the scientist for a discussion. He has thought long and hard on the matter and has reached the following conclusion. The voices coming through the instrument must be coming from people like themselves, people who are living and conscious, although speaking in another language. Instead of assuming that the voices are simply properties of the headset, they should investigate the possibility that through the mysterious communication network they are in touch with other humans. Perhaps further study along these lines could lead to greater understanding of the world beyond their island. But these scientists simply laugh at the sage and say, "Look, when we damage the instrument, the voices stop coming. So they're obviously nothing more than sounds produced by a unique combination of lithium and printed circuit boards and light emitting diodes." In this parable, we see how easy it is to let perceived theories shape the way we view evidence instead of letting the evidence shape our theories. And this book is There Is a God, How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind. and it's by Anthony Flew. Oh, yeah. And that was chapter 4, called A Pilgrimage of Reason. If you don't know, he was a big-time atheist, and all the atheists used to praise him. This is a while, but and then he changed his mind. He saw the evidence, and it changed his mind. Yeah, and I'll continue. I'm not going to talk too much, put in my 2 cents too much on this. But here are some scientists that have some thoughts on the intelligence or God behind the universe, right? That created everything and us. This one is Robert Jestro.
Just as I can't believe that there was a creator, I can't believe that this all happened by chance, which implies there was a creator. So you see, I'm in a completely hopeless bind, and I've stayed there. Again, I find it hard to believe that this is all a matter of atoms and molecules. And so I try to fit into my concept of the world the conclusion that there is a larger force of some kind, which we can call God, or you could call it whatever. But I can't accept that. I'm what's called a materialist in philosophy. I believe in that doesn't mean I like Cadillacs and big cars. My students always used to think that. It means that I believe the world consists entirely of material substances. And when you specify those substances, the atoms and molecules, and the laws by which they interact, you've done it all. There isn't anything more to be said or inserted into your model of the universe. And that's what my science tells me, and I've been a scientist all my life. But I find it unsatisfactory. In fact, it makes me uneasy. I feel I'm missing something, but it will not. I will not find out what I'm missing within my lifetime. If you reverse the motion, the outward motions of the galaxies, and go backward in time, they come closer and closer together, and you reach a point finally where they're nearly infinite in density and temperature, and farther than that you can't go. So there's a beginning. There's a point in time from which it all started. And that's a remarkable thing because it has a very strong theological flavor to it. And that intrigued me because I am an agnostic. And if there was a beginning, a moment of creation in the universe, then there was a creator. And the creator is not compatible with agnosticism. And I found that message so interesting that I felt a strong compulsion to share it with others. And so that's why I wrote that book.
And he worked for NASA. He actually was the first chairman of NASA's Lunar Exploration Committee, establishing goals for exploration of the moon during Apollo lunar landings. At the same time, he also was the chief of the theoretical division at NASA. He became the founding director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies in 1961 and served until his retirement from NASA in 1981. Concurrently, he was also a professor of geophysics at Columbia University. Alright, so, and some of his quotes about God are, at this point, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the heights, the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Astronomers now find they have painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation to which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, and every living thing in this cosmos and on the earth. And they have found that all of this happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I and or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Another one is far from disproving the existence of God. Astronomers have been finding more circumstantial evidence for the existence or for evidence that God exists. Now we see how the astronomical evidence supports the biblical view of the origins of the world. The details differ, but the essential elements. Now we see the astronomical evidence supports the biblical view of the origins of the world. The details differ, but the essential elements of the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis are the same. The chain of events leading to man commenced suddenly and sharply, at a definite moment in time, in a flash of light and energy. Another one is Fred Hoyle. Professor Sir Fred Hoyle was one of the most distinguished, creative, and controversial scientists of the 20th century. He was a fellow of St. John's College 1939 to 1972, honorary fellow 1973 to 2001, was elected a fellow of the Royal Society in 1957, held the Pullman Chair of Astronomy and Experimental Philosophy, established the Institute of Theoretical Astronomy in Cambridge, now part of the Institute of Astronomy, and in 1972 received a knighthood for his service to astronomy. He was also a keen mountain climber, avid player of chess, science fiction writer, and a popularizer of science, and the man who coined the phrase Big Bang. Alright, so let's see what some of his quotes were. And I think it's important to see that there are scientists, like real scientists, who have arrived at the conclusion that, there is a God. To what extent, or like who he is, and how he operates, they differ on their conclusion, but they all think there's a higher intelligence behind this. There's some form of God, right? One of his quotes is, "Space isn't remote at all. It's only an hour's drive away if your car could go straight upwards." That's not very far at all. Let's see. A junkyard contains all the bits and pieces of a Boeing 747, dismembered and in disarray. A whirlwind happens to blow through the yard. What is the chance that after it passes, a fully assembled 747 ready to fly will be found standing there, so small as to be negligible, even if a tornado were to blow through enough junkyards to fill the whole universe? Life cannot have had a random beginning. The trouble is that there are about 2,000 enzymes, and the chances of attaining them all in a random trial is only 1 part in, I think it's like 10 billion or something like that. It's a lot. An outrageously small probability that could not be faced, even if the whole universe consisted of organic soup. Once we see, however, the probability of life originating at random is so utterly minuscule as to make it absurd, it becomes sensible to think that the favorable properties of physics on which life depends are in every respect deliberate. It is therefore almost inevitable that our own measure of intelligence must reflect higher intelligences, even to the limit of God. Such a theory is so obvious that one wonders why it is not widely accepted as being self-evident. The reasons are psychological rather than scientific. It isn't the universe that follows our logic. It is we that are constructed in accordance with the logic of the universe. And that gives what I might call a definition of intelligent life. Something that reflects the base structure of the universe. So the notion, this is Fred Hoyle too, the notion that not only the biopolymer, but the operating program of a living cell could be arrived at by chance in a primordial organic soup here on Earth is evidently nonsense of a high order. Once the photograph of the Earth taken from the outside is available, a new idea is powerful, as any in history will be let loose. Okay, so let's see. Would you not say to yourself in whatever language super calculating intellects use, some super calculating intellect must have designed the properties of the carbon atom? Otherwise, the chance of my finding such an atom through the blind forces of nature would be less than 1 part in 10 to the, I think it's like 4 power to the 4. I don't know. Of course you would. I have always been intrigued by the remarkable relation of the 7.65 MeV energy level in the nucleus of the 12 to the 12 MeV level. I have no idea what that is. So, 16 I think it's O. If you wanted to produce carbon and oxygen in roughly equal quantities by stellar nuclear synthesis, these are the 2 levels you would have to fix. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as the chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. And it's Fred Hoyle. I don't know why I said Frederick. But yeah, I butchered a lot of that. But and like these are like powerhouses. They've contributed a lot, and they at the end of the day they arrived at that there was an intelligence. There was a super intelligence at the end, whatever that might be. And I think it's important to know that if you believe in God, that you're not starting from a position with no evidence. You're just not. And I know they like to say that, but and there's lots more physicists that you can read that come to the same conclusion. This is just a few. But I kind of wanted to keep this video as short as possible. It didn't end up that way. But yeah, I guess I'll end with some. So this is Albert Einstein. The deep emotional conviction of the presence of a super reasoning power which is revealed in the incomprehensible universe forms my idea. And he says, I want to know all God's thoughts. All the rest are just details, which is actually pretty deep if you think about it. So, yep. So that was my light side of things, and I'm gonna end with this brief part of a sermon. You don't hear very many preachers talking like this anymore. So have a good day and shalom.
Isn't it strange that people look everywhere for salvation and turn away from the only one who can save? Even in our churches now, we minimize responsibilities and we emphasize privileges. Many times when we go out to witness, we are talking about from God. And do you know, people are still believing the devil rather than God. Now people are saying that Jesus Christ is a myth. They say the Bible is just a legend. And you know, in the past few weeks, you heard National Council of Churches pushing a new edition of the Bible where they call themselves, we're going to do away with all that sexist language in the Bible. You don't need to say our Father. You can say our Father, our Mother. No. Yeah, but that's somebody who doesn't know the Lord. But I'm afraid that too many of us who call ourselves being sophisticated, up to date, and relevant with the times, we get taken in by that kind of a thing. You can't substitute for the Word of God. There's no substitute for salvation. There's nobody like Jesus. You know, people are looking for